Welcome to another episode of the Ride On Motorcycle Podcast. I'm your host, Jogo, and this stream is sponsored by Break Free. And today we're going to have a fantastic guest coming on. He is a current motor sergeant, an amateur motocross racer, and the owner of the Lock and Lean Advanced Motorcycle Course. A lot of you guys already know him, Ben Wolfe. Can't wait to bring him on. Let's bring in Ben Wolfe, but if you guys watch the podcast, you know we got to do it the right way and bring him in with the intro. So let's roll it. Ben, I'm glad to have you on today. How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, man. That was pretty cool.
No problem, no problem. Ben, let's hop into the first question here.
Yeah.
So, why don't you just tell us a little about yourself and what got you into riding motorcycles?
All right. Well, I'm Ben Wolfe and currently a full-time police motorcycle sergeant on patrol up in the conservation areas of Northern Illinois. And I've been doing that with this department for just under 17 years. Uh, been doing police motorcycle training since the early 2000s. It was like 2002, 2003 when I got certified through Michigan State University. But before all that, just had a infatuation for anything with two wheels when I was a kid. My first motorcycle was like a cake topper toy that was just in the house and just kind of playing the game of making it go around the house and all over the furniture and watching motocross on TV and then watching the reruns of Chips, as a lot of us did that are watching, and just had a lot of fun with it. And when I was young, like elementary school age, jumped on a Honda Spree, and we had one of those laying around the house. So I was able to kind of tool around the backyard and just have some fun with that because I always wanted a dirt bike, but it's one of those things that I had to work towards. And so I kind of followed that progression of just having fun with motorsports. And I don't know, I always had a dream of doing something with motorcycles. And um, I cut grass and landscaped and did chores and got my first dirt bike when I was 11. So that was when I had my first motorcycle officially. It was a 1991 Honda CR 80. And, I had some buddies that were getting into dirt bikes and had XRs and some of the more mild mannered motorcycles that I learned on. And then when I got this bike, it was a good deal, for my family to get. But I remember watching the salesman go out, with the dirt bike behind the dealership, and he did a wheelie. And this is a grown man on an 80cc bike, and he's doing a wheelie past me. And I look at my dad and I said, "Does it always do that?" And he says, "Only if you want it to." And I'll never forget that. And then a funny little story with that side story was on the way home from getting this bike that I had saved all my money up for. We really didn't know how to tie it down properly. We were kind of new to the game with this, and it fell off the trailer onto the road as we pulled out of the dealership. So lesson was learned, right away before I even got to sit on the thing. So that was cool. And then I just progressed through motocross bikes. And around the age of 15, my dad was getting into street motorcycles again and doing police motorcycle training through his job. And I started dabbling in street motorcycles. So I ended up taking a basic rider course and got my motorcycle endorsement. But even before I got my endorsement, I was on a Sportster 883 Hugger with floorboards on it. It was like
Nice.
a baby Heritage Softail, and I started doing cone riding and training and street training, at age 15. So
Wow.
by the time I was 18, I started doing motocross a little bit more serious. I didn't really get into racing much because of time constraints and just travel, money. I did a couple races, just amateur level races, had a lot of fun with it, but got into doing a little bit of freestyle and some free ride jumping and kind of worked my way up through different size motocross bikes. I had a little track in the backyard that kept me busy and out of trouble for the most part. And had a lot of fun with it. And then I remember my first experience at a police motor school. my father had set up a training course for local sheriffs and was teaching through Michigan State University. And I kept telling him, "Oh yeah, that's no big deal riding these Harleys, and I can ride dirt bikes and jump and do all this cool stuff. How hard could it be?" So he invited me out, and kind of as a call out, he's like, "Hey, why don't you jump on one of these Road Kings and show all these officers, what it's like to handle a motorcycle?" So there I go on a Road King, and I head off into the parking lot, and just an offset cone weave. And about the second gate in, I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know anything about clutch and throttle and brake as the way it applies to slow speed operation. And I looped myself out and put myself right on the ground, right in front of 12 guys that are learning to become motor officers. And I remember all 12 of them taking their motorcycles, surrounding me, and then turning their sirens on at the same time,
Oh my
kind of like
gosh.
welcome to the world of what you don't know. And so that's my initiation to police motors. And from that moment on, I just told myself, I said, well, I really don't want to put myself in that situation again. So if I really want to learn this, it's time to get serious and start listening more. So um, that's kind of how it started as far as me getting into motorcycles, me getting into motors. My dad was a police officer, a career police officer. Followed in his footsteps, both in the police career and in motors, and off we went. So
Yeah.
moving into where we're at now, it just evolved slowly but surely. As things started to progress in my career, I started to go to different competitions. My first competition that I actually attended was in 2000, and a lot of people don't realize, but my dad had actually started the first police and civilian combined competition back in the year 2000, before it was really a thing to have the police riding community riding with the civilian community. So he's really kind of like one of the OGs that really brought those two communities together, not on paper, but together in a parking lot to start working together to train better and to get these life-saving skills out to everybody, not just the police environment. Now, one thing to keep in mind, I'm not saying that he created police motor riding, competing, anything like that. I'm just
Right.
saying the combination of bringing civilians into the police world, or non-police into the police training world, it was really a first of its kind. So yeah, he set the groundwork for that, and it was really nice to have that exposure to the civilian riding community, that they could attain the same skills that motor officers have. So that was the first exposure to that. Obviously, there's been police motorcycle competitions that have been out there long before we existed in the world. The Mid Atlantic, if I
Mhm.
remember correctly, I think that's the oldest police motorcycle competition in existence. A really well run event. There's a lot of mentors and people that I've met along the way. Al Fariso, for example, New York City. That guy's a legend out there, and among others that have come from there and actually joined us at events in the Midwest. So super cool experience, leading up to that. And then obviously I've traveled around. My first competition, I guess abroad or away from kind of my home base where I grew up, was Canada, and it was like 2003. So it's 20 years ago that I stepped foot on my first range to train with officers, and that was a police only event at the time. It was my first go at it, again, away from my comfort zone, and I learned a lot from it. A lot of great riders up in Canada. I've got mentors up there that helped me along the way. Andy Norrie, I just want to give a shout out to him from Toronto. Smooth as fast. I'll never forget, the things that he shared with me at these events. And, he's always very kind and encouraging. And so, 2003, and then I got hooked on the competition side. Obviously, I was pursuing the police um, career. So it was a natural collision course
Mhm.
for me to have that happen. And so I was teaching with an organization, Michigan State University. That's where I got my credentials, my certification for being a motor officer, and then my instructor certification. So that's where it all started for me. And then
Okay.
after Michigan State, um, Midwest, and then after Midwest, I had a motocross injury racing like 2012, um, where in a practice I ended up getting crossed up on a jump and destroyed my leg pretty good and had to have surgery. So, long story short, I had some downtime, and there were some things that I always wanted to do with the street training side of it that I never really found the time to put to paper. And so Lock and Lean was actually born while I was, out from surgery and injury. And 2003 is when we really started rolling with classes. And then
Okay.
fast forward till now, it hasn't stopped. I mean, I've been training motors and civilian riders since 2002, 2003. So it's been a
Yeah.
really fun ride.
Now, so you it sounds like your background in riding motorcycle, it goes way back. So let's go into the second question here. So you own Lock and Lean, you created it. So you want to explain a little bit what exactly is the Lock and Lean course and how was it created? You kind of mentioned how it was just created, but
Yeah, so I mean, it was created from just a thought process of how can we make the training more efficient for all riders. The struggle is, in a police motor school, which we certify police officers for the job, it's usually a 2-week motor school, and there's not many non-police individuals that can just take 2 weeks off of work with all the commitments they have and just commit to such a training. When motor officers come to this training, it's 80 hours and they're getting paid and committed to those 2 weeks from their schedule to train to get certified to be professional operators on a motorcycle. Uh, from the civilian side of it, when I was sitting there thinking about the existing classes I was teaching and some of the techniques that I was utilizing off road and some of the techniques that I utilized through competition, some of the things that I learned through my travels, there were some other ways that I felt I could utilize to help enhance people's riding abilities and do it in a way that was more of a process. And it just was a little bit different structure than where I was at. So when I had that downtime, I'm like, let's go. The angry cone itself was created by me. I drew it. And the reason that that cone was drawn, I remember sitting there with my leg up, in a brace. And I remember students, over the years telling me, hey, you know what? I didn't knock that cone over, Ben. It bit me. I'm telling you, it bit my motorcycle. And I thought that was kind of cute. So I mean, that's where the angry cone was born. It was one of those deals where it's like, okay, I mean, this is cool. Let's roll with it. And Lock and Lean, the whole principle behind that is, I could keep hearing students in my head even to this day. If I could just lock the bars a little further, if I could just lean that motorcycle a little bit more, I
Mhm.
could take that turn. And I mean, so it's not like crazy over the top meaning. It's just pretty simplistic, straight to the point. Like, yeah, maximize your lock and maximize your lean before the angry cone can get you. And that angry cone represents all the things that could possibly be a threat on the road, right? I mean, we train
Mhm.
in cones because using cars maybe wouldn't be the best idea for someone learning, might be a little too intimidating. Using people isn't the best idea because the risk versus reward, although sometimes in higher level classes we do. Um, that's where all of that was born. So as far as curriculum, the curriculum itself is a process, and it was born from research and development and testing that I did not only on the platform that I ride, which is a Harley Davidson Road King, but I also did it on different platforms: Gold Wings, Indians, Yamahas, Triumphs, a bunch of different motorcycles that people had that they would allow me to ride. The other thing that I found interesting is when I was injured and I had that leg injury. It was ACL tear, MCL. I had reconstructive surgery on my leg. I wasn't sure how I was going to bounce back from that injury. So I was trying to think of how am I going to be able to kind of work this 850, 900-pound motorcycle around with a bum leg. And
Mhm.
long story short, I started thinking of different processes that I've used to work my dirt bike through things that I've learned in competition, things that I've learned from students making mistakes and going, aha, I see that. And this is how we can correct it. So I went onto the range and I put in hours and hours and hours of testing turns and testing brakes and testing platforms of motorcycles and riding in the rain and riding off road with street tires, and the list goes on. And after I concluded everything that I had as far as the collection of data and studying what I was able to do with 50% leg strength, and friends and family and riders that were coming out to practice with me, what they were able to do with some of these techniques in this process. The curriculum was born, and then it evolved from there. So it's a multi-tier uh, process, if you will, a multi-stage process. It goes through 4 stages, and again, it's based off of our 80-hour course for police officers. On
Mhm.
the civilian side of it, in the modules, you get a little bit more time to get through each module than a police motor officer would. But there's a lot of research, development, and testing that went on, instead of just saying, "Hey, let's just try this." I mean, it started with that, but then it's like, did it work? Didn't it work? And why?
Yeah, and from experience myself, I took the 101 course and I could just tell it was very well thought out, and I reached to the point to where I needed to take myself to the next level, and I've already learned as much as I could off of YouTube. That's where I get a lot of my knowledge, and
Sure.
there's some great YouTubers out there like Robert Simmons that's in the chat right now. He pretty much prepared me for your class so that way I could push myself to the next level. And
That's awesome.
I actually have a clip from when I was at the 101 course, so I'm going to go ahead and roll that real quick.
All right.
On day one, they teach you how to mount your motorcycle like a police motor officer. Let's have a listen.
Mount up!
Mount up!
Stand them up!
Stand them up!
Side stands up!
Side stand up!
Start your motor!
Start your motor!
Man, the very first thing we did was we practiced going around corners without our brakes. This was quite difficult considering I always relied on my rear brake. We did this going left a few times, and then of course we turned around and started practicing doing it to the right. After a while, I actually got the hang of it and realized I don't have to use so much rear brake. Now that we practice with no brakes, they let us use them again during our left and right turns, and this made it a whole lot easier. We moved on to practicing turns from a stop, U-turns, and figure eights. I thought to myself, man, this is too easy. Maybe I should have went to a more advanced class. Well, until day 2 came around. They introduced us to the setup for the keyhole. It's pretty much a U-turn, so how hard could it be? After all, I practiced this a lot before I came to the course and was successful. And this is where I was quickly humbled. It was at this exact moment I knew I screwed up. I want to recognize how dedicated my instructor Wade was. He fixed the cone before checking on me. Now that's true dedication.
Yeah. Yeah. Shout out to Wade, and he fixed that cone before he even checked on me. That's my favorite part of that video. Awesome. But that was my experience, a short clip of my experience. If you guys want to see the full video, it's on my YouTube channel, so just go ahead and check it out. And that was the 101 class. I'm really looking forward to. I got to schedule it, but I want to do the 102 class and the 103, and I'm going to try to prepare my best for it. But I know it's going to get a little intense there.
Oh, without a doubt. But it'll be fun.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so let's move on to question 3. We saw a little bit of the lock and lean course that I took, and then you explained a little bit of it. So what separates lock and lean from other advanced motorcycle courses?
As far as separation goes, the biggest thing that I've always focused on since the creation of it is the process. So I wanted to develop a process for people that led to a standard at the end, something to achieve. And the process is something where we've brought in a multitude of different techniques into the 101 structure, and the focus of that structure is just technique. Cone patterns are great, but if they don't have any substance behind the technique, then you're just riding a shape. And so when I was teaching the other school, and when I was teaching some practice sessions, and people were like, "Hey, I want to learn how to do a keyhole. I want to learn how to do an intersection. I want to learn how to do the bleeding ulcers and all these different patterns they found." The common theme was they wanted to ride a certain pattern. And I didn't feel like riding a certain pattern should be a goal. I think the goal should be you can ride any pattern you want. So let's focus on some more technical skill building and get those technical skills more sound first before we just throw you to the wolves and say, hey, go do that keyhole. So the idea behind 101 is it's designed for riders of all skill levels. It's a good baseline and kind of the pillar of developing a rider's comfort in slow speed operation. And so it starts from a crawl. It starts like your video had shown without having the brakes, using your proper clutch and throttle control. It's having your head and eye placement where it needs to be. It's using the posture of your body properly so you're not putting strain on your shoulders and your arms. It's having a clear head. It's having confidence in momentum and when to use it. So it's more fluid with your turns and your leans and your transitions in general. And so essentially 101 is the groundwork, if you will, to get people comfortable making that motorcycle more of an extension of them versus just riding a shape. And let's be
Right.
honest, when you're riding on the street, and our curriculum is street focused, if you're on the street, a shape will present itself when it presents itself. So, what I mean by that is you might have practiced the intersection 100 times, a
Mm.
cone weave 100 times. But when a car pulls out in front of you, what's the shape? Do you know what that shape's going to look like? It could look like a question mark. It could look like a wall. It could look like an angle. It could look like a cone weave. It could look like a U turn. So the whole idea behind our program is let's give riders the tools they need. So when a moment happens and presents itself, their instincts combined with proper repetition, practice with purpose,
Mhm.
it just happens. They maneuver. They don't have to think about it and subject themselves to a bigger problem that's compounding from the fear that's in front of them. So again, learning how to ride shapes is cool, but if you can learn the technique of how to master the technique in a moment of stress, now you can apply it to any shape at any time. And again, we start at slower speeds and then work our way up. The second tier of that is our 102 course. So the second portion of it, we start to put a stopwatch and time riders through the precision skills. So you learned all the technical aspects of it in 101 on how to lean a motorcycle properly, how to slow ride a motorcycle vertically, how to escape from a dead stop and have your controls under control in a situation of duress. And now we're putting those skills to test with a stopwatch because, again, when things unfold in the real world, you never know how much time you're going to actually have in a moment, right? A
Yep.
car could hit you in a half a second, or you might have a 5 second window that things are just falling and unfolding. It's an unpredictable world of situations and an unlimited amount of scenarios we could come up with. So we try to create a little sense of urgency in the 102 course when you're running the precision stuff to get from point A to B with as much efficiency. We don't like to say speed because speed to me gets into people's head and they think they got to go fast. And when they go fast, they make mistakes that they can't
Mm.
necessarily recover from. If you can't get around the corner of the vehicle and you get trapped because you rushed it from your panic instead of taking that fraction of a second to use your process and get your setup dialed in so you clear that obstacle, it could put yourself in a bad situation, and again, time is of essence. So that's where the 102 slow portion comes in. And then we start bringing in the braking element and the evading element at speed. So our speeds in the 102 course start to creep up to 30 miles an hour where we have students coming down a chute and essentially they start to apply their braking as if let's just say a threat presented itself, an obstacle presented itself, a situation presented itself. And in the previous training that I was teaching and taking, it was very basic in the way that riders escaped. It was either kind of like a left or a right. And in my experience and training, patrolling at all hours of the day and night, our shifts sometimes go to midnight, and we'll be on the motor depending on what detail we have going on. You could have so many different opportunities for escape that maybe you wouldn't think of unless you trained with it. So, one of the ugly buttons in that scenario is, what if you have to use oncoming traffic as an escape route? Okay. What if you have to jump a curb? What if you have to do a U-turn, even though you might hear skidding tires? You start to see things unfold in front of you where your escape routes all of a sudden disappear, and now the only option is the ugly one. Well, I decided in our training in the 102 class, when you're coming at speed, that's great if you can get stopped, but if you can't escape, it kind of defeats the purpose. I mean, I'm glad that you got stopped, but now if you get hit from behind because you're dragging your feet on the ground, or you have no control over your clutch, or you panic and you launch your clutch and hit the car in front
Mhm.
of you, that was kind of the building block process between 101 and 102. Again, trying to get into more of a realistic environmental type training for 102 to start applying the skills from 101. And we do evasive maneuvers in 102. We do different escape routes. We do a curve negotiation and braking in a curve. We do some group riding. We do a nice mix of things throughout the process, and then we reinforce what they learned in 101. And then after that, we go to the 201 course. So that would be my third course, is 201. And essentially, what we're doing is we're increasing the speeds, we're increasing the intensity from 102. The standards are always very, very similar as far as the process to get to the end goal, which for us is trying to get students to graduate our classes before they move on to the next level of the class. In the past, people would call me up and say, "Hey, I've been riding for X amount of years. Can I just jump right into your highest level 301 class?" And I used to say, "You know what? Yeah, why don't you?" But then this is what I found: when people would just skip the other modules of our training, they would get to 301 and they'd see other students that had gone through each step of the process, if you will, the cart before the horse, right? That's where their
Mhm.
mindset was. And I'm going, take a look at what this person's doing differently than you. And they said, "Well, I didn't learn that." And I said, "Yeah, because they learned that in a different class where we had more time to focus on that. Once you get to a higher level, or my highest level class, we definitely focus on skills, but I have an expectation that you have some of the basics, or a lot of the basics, down, so we can move forward with some of the intensity that's presented." So when you go to the 201 class, I'll give you an example. We kick the speeds up to 40 miles an hour, and people have 67 feet to stop. And then if they don't get stopped in time, they get swallowed up by the 8 escape routes that are possible. Um, you know, in the olden days when I taught, it was 62 feet, but you had 2 directions to go and you had to check a mirror for a flag. And that was great. I'm not saying that's bad, but I decided to take it to a different level, saying in real world environments, and as close as I can get with traffic cones, right, without bringing people or cars in, what can I do? And that was the ugly. Bring in those escape routes into oncoming. How about oncoming to the far curb? How about oncoming near curb? How about around the car and then back through car parts that have scattered everywhere? And we're going to do it after we slow down from 40 miles an hour. So it's what, 59 feet per second, I believe, that you're covering the ground. And at 67 feet, if you think about it, you got the length of the motorcycle. You have the length of the motorcycle with 8 different possibilities of escapes that we call out. And you have to make it happen without putting your foot down or making a mistake. So we're trying to develop muscle memory in a threshold type environment where a rider will be like, "You know what? I've been here before. I'm not going to panic. I'm just going to apply the tool right now, and let whatever happen. Because there are certain situations in life, right, we can't avoid. You could be the best rider in the world, the best competitor in the world, and a car comes out from nowhere and T-bones you, and all that training. I mean, I'm not saying that it's for nothing, because it's not, but in that scenario,
Right.
like, it's real world. So the 201 class definitely intensifies the level of turn, the level of demand of braking, the level of escape, the narrowness of the pattern, the speeds of the slower speed time patterns, if you will. And then we also have a precision element where we bring people in and we start tightening corridors up more and more. because one of our sayings is don't ever ride into a place you can't ride out of. So, in order to feel that confident that you can go in somewhere and make a turn or a maneuver without putting your foot down, we have to keep raising that bar as we progress, through our classes. And then the very last one is the 301 class. And when the 301 class was born, the whole idea was, I've competed in motor competitions for 20 years, and I learned a lot from these competitions, from riders, from the environment, from the pressure. And what's really cool about it is, motorcycle competitions, and specifically police oriented ones from the past, the whole objective of police officers competing in the cones was to put a little bit of stress on that motor officer by having his peers watch, the public watch, and putting them on display to demonstrate their skills, which obviously will get the heart rate going, will cause that rider to start thinking twice about a certain turn or a certain thing they don't like in their process, and they got to figure it out, right? It's here's your name, you're getting called, here's your course, do the best that you can, and your objective should be to get to the end of the course, because the way I was always taught is at the end of that course when we're competing, that's your partner, that is calling for assistance. That's a citizen that needs you to get there. That's an intersection that needs to be blocked because there's a bad car accident. And the list goes on. So my mindset in training from a young age, wasn't about the trophy. The trophy to me was getting to my destination and helping people. And then the trophy was a nice byproduct. I mean, who doesn't like getting, an award or rewarded for doing something good? But it wasn't the main focus, and it still isn't today. It's nice. We enjoy it, and we like to reward people. And again, going back to the class, we do have a standard, and that standard was set based on all the different drills, all the research and development that I was doing on my own and working with people. And we came up with what the requirements are in order to graduate 101, what the minimum requirements are. And I'll give you an example. One of the requirements are you have to be able to turn both directions within 18 feet. Okay, a U-turn. That's one element of several. The reason that we picked 18 feet, okay, so you understand that thought process, is I went out to roadways, and I live out in the country, and I've been out in the country. And if you think about it, where do most motorcyclists really enjoy? The country, and away from the street environment, the city street environment. And so I wanted to look at 2-lane roads, and I actually took out a tape measure and just started measuring them, all over the place, saying, hey, what is this measurement? Just out of curiosity, what is this measurement? And you know what I found? Inconsistency. So I'd have a roadway that, was 22 feet. I had some that were 20 feet. I had some that were 17 feet that tapered up and then back down. Some had gravel. Some had lanes that merged out of nowhere. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, let's kind of find an average that we think at our basic level class, okay, still an advanced class, but our basic level class would accommodate most people on 2-lane roads or narrow passages. What is a distance that is reasonable for them to learn, but also when they leave the class, very usable and practical, as they go on. So that's one example of why that standard is the way it is. And of course, we have multiple elements to the test. The one thing I tell people is practicing with the standard is practicing with purpose. And if for some reason you set that standard and you don't get to it, it's one of those things where you look at it as half full or half empty, depending on the type of person you are. Obviously, someone could come back and take the course, but I tell everyone that embarks on our journey, even if you don't pass your first go at it, you last all 3 days and you participate, you are going to gain a ton of knowledge, a ton of tools that you can apply, and hopefully you practice what you've learned and you practice it properly, and then have an opportunity to come back if you so choose, if it works for you and you enjoyed it. And then you earn your way through. So when somebody gets a certificate, they earn it. And I think, from you being in the class, you understand what that involves, and, we stick to our guns.
Oh yeah, there was actually a guy that ended up failing the course, and I did a little interview with him, but he didn't even know that you would get a certificate if you pass. But he said he gained so much knowledge and he felt so much more confident. He said it didn't really matter, and
Sure.
honestly, for me, it's just a piece of paper. I'm there for the knowledge. And another thing that I really liked about the 101 course is they give you a new perspective on like thinking about these maneuvers that you're doing. For example, in the keyhole and the figure eight, they showed us that you actually have two routes that you can take. You can so you're riding along the entire cones, but say you need a tighter exit, then you cut in even more and then exit. And I never really thought about it that way.
Yeah, so in that curriculum, without diving in too much to it, because then I'll get excited and start teaching a class on air. And I mean, as much as I'd love to do it, I want to be there to actually go hands on with people to show
Yeah.
them real time, just the way we do it. But we have different turnstiles, and part of that research and development was the recovery turn, and that's what you're talking about. You're talking about going
Yep.
from a perimeter turn using all your space versus coming in using your setup space and then turning early, getting the process done. And then on the back end of the turn, where a lot of people feel vulnerable, they have escape routes. That's the recovery turn that you're speaking of. And then as we move into the more intensive classes, we start to talk about dives and different types of braking and things that you can apply at slow speeds. But you're absolutely right. As far as the paper is concerned, it's nice. And as we move forward, next year, we really would like people to start in 101, even if they have experiences, motor officers, if they have experience as, instructors, other places. I mean, I just had a class in Tennessee, and I had, I think, like 6 road glides or something in the class. And I had instructors from another school, and they were awesome people. And, they humbled themselves, came and said, look, I want to learn your process, but I want to do it right. And they were absolutely wonderful people. Another thing I want to just mention, as far as what makes us different from others, I appreciate training and people riding and having fun. And I just hope that people get training. There's a lot of different training schools out there. There's a lot of different styles of riding out there. Enjoy them, try them.
Hmm.
Not every single school or person will mesh, right? I'm doing motocross racing as an amateur right now. Later in life, for some reason, I decided I hit the 40 mark. Let's go jump dirt bikes again. you know,
Midlife crisis.
yeah, I guess, or maybe just never left me crisis, and now I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, the kids are into it now, so I can kind of jump back in the game. Um, but I've gone to a couple different dirt bike schools, and I can say that I mesh more with one instructor than another. And it's not that that other instructor is bad or what they do is bad. It's just different. I connect with the style of a different coach that's kind of more in line of how I flow and do my thing, and there's nothing wrong with that. But
Yep.
the biggest thing I want to get before we move forward is I know this is an opportunity for me to showcase lock and lean, but there are a lot of good training schools and instructors out there. I didn't invent it, but I did maybe recreate it to a certain
Mhm.
degree with some of the techniques that if you were to take our class with our posture technique and our setup, eyes up, lean forward technique, it is different than majority of the people that are teaching out there, and that's okay. I found that that process has worked tremendously with the people we've trained. We've had great success stories and a lot of growth in riders, and we have a lot of fun. Not only do you get to tolerate some intensity, but there's a lot of bad singing, maybe a little bit of dancing going on, horrible humor, but it's all in good fun. So we enjoyed them a lot.
Yeah, I encourage you guys, if you haven't taken one of these courses, go for it. You're going to be hooked, and you're going to want to move on to the next level. So, off of that question, you explained that extremely well, thoroughly. For question number 4, uh, who's lock and lean for, and is there any specific like prerequisites or requirements that you need to have?
No, lock and lean. Well, I shouldn't say no. Yes, there is. You have to have a motorcycle license. But
Okay,
as
that's a
far
good
as
start.
yeah, as far as this, because it's an advanced course, I don't offer licensing at this point.
Mm,
At some point in my career, one of my, um, I guess, goals for my legacy in training is I would love to help enhance the standards for what is required to get people a motorcycle license. And I would love for the state to offer a program similar to what we offer to legitimize the handling capabilities of a rider before they leave a parking lot on a legitimate sized motorcycle. That is a goal. But when you come to our course, some people say, well, wouldn't it be nice to have a ton of experience? Well, yes and no. So I'll give you some examples. If somebody comes with 30 years, 50 years experience, they may come with 30 or 50 years of bad habits. And old habits die hard. So, you're trying to break the dragging the feet and grabbing the front brake at slow speed. You're trying to, get around the fact that they've never really rotated the bars and leaned forward and felt what it's like for a motorcycle to truly lean towards earth and then catch it underneath them in complete control. And so that's just it's one of those things that um, we get a new rider that has zero experience, and they come in and they don't have bad habits. So you'd be surprised that some of those riders will actually outperform, let's just say, their spouse. So one example, and I won't name any names, but I've had a husband and wife duo several times throughout my years of teaching. And I've had the husband who's been an instructor of a program and the wife who is not. And she passes the course and he doesn't because he's got his stubborn ways of doing things. And she is just willing to listen and apply the techniques. And it's no fault to him, right? Like I said, that you learn a certain way, they become ingrained. I mean, I've been guilty of that too. When I started this whole process, I was a little bit more stubborn on being more open-minded to the training that's out there. But like I said in my previous statement, get training. There's a lot of good formal training out there all over the world, and there's a lot of really good qualified people that can do it. And so, as far as requirements are concerned, bring your motorcycle of choice. Have a endorsement, and you're good to go. And then an open mind.
Yeah.
And that's all I say. And then as far as the effort goes too, as long as a student stays focused and dedicated and desiring to learn, our instructors are second to none. They will not give up on you. They will work with you. I have some people that I see posts every once in a while, people saying, I'd love to do this, but I'm 70 years old. Well, I have two team members that are in their mid 70s, and they outperform a lot of riders that I know, including myself on some days. And because that's just how it goes.
Yep.
So when we talk about age or ability, it frustrates me a little bit that people get convinced through maybe a negative channel that they're not able to do this or capable of doing this. I couldn't disagree more. They are capable. A lot of times they don't know the abilities that they may possess until it's tested. And that's why we have standards, and that's why we have a process. Instead of just saying, hey, go over there and do that pattern, we say, why don't we try turning the motorcycle 90 degrees at a slower speed and keeping your eyes up and rotating the bars with a little bit of lean forward and keeping your RPMs in check. And let's see where it goes from there. So it's one of those things where, again, we're fully prepared through our training experience and process to take on, the most experienced rider and their bad habits and stubbornness, or the most basic, afraid rider that just says, look, I was thinking about selling my bike. I don't know what else to do. I got my license, but here I am. We welcome you. We'll take on the challenge.
Yeah. One other thing I would suggest bringing to the course is, if you don't have drop protection on your motorcycle, specifically Pan Americas, make sure you have it on there, because when those things fall over, it hurts really bad. It's not like a Road King that has the nice crash bars on it.
You mean engine guards?
Yeah, and engine guards. My fault.
Because listen, it ain't crash guards. It's not guarding you from a crash. You've already crashed if you're laying on the crash guards. It's an engine guard.
All right, fair enough. But then to go into the instructors, the instructors are great. I mean, Wade and Dave, top notch. Dave's a little bit of a firecracker, but but he's very good.
Yeah, I saw Q make a comment about my singing. What about Dave's humor?
Uh-oh.
I mean, come on.
Here he goes.
Yeah.
We're
getting fired up.
All right, so let's move into question 5, and then I'm going to bring in a little information about the break free for question number 5. In your opinion, what was the most important skill that riders should practice? I know there's going to probably be multiple, but if you only had to choose one, which one would it be?
I can't.
Fair enough. All right, it's your top three.
No, I won't even say top 3. I already had a
Okay.
response. All of them. And let me
Okay. All right.
explain. I mean, there's an explanation to it. I know
Go for it.
that seems cookie cutter and like I'm trying to get out of the question, and it's not true. Um, a lot of people will say the most important thing for riders to learn is the road speed braking. And I don't disagree with that mindset that learning braking at speed is great. But if they don't know how to control a motorcycle at slow speed, what's the point of sending them at 20, 30, 40, 50 miles an hour to try to stop a motorcycle to just be sitting there dead in the water with, 900 pounds of dead weight? That's why we have a process to build up to those speeds. And we have a process to getting people from a turn of the key comfortable with that motorcycle and whatever platform they have. So it's one of those things where, again, I've heard a lot of people in my time training over 20 years say, that the braking is the most important thing. No, it's one of the most important things. You want to have a well-rounded rider from the turn of the key, because if they can't get to the roadway safely, what speed they brake at is irrelevant. So practicing slow and taking baby steps is the way that I like to do things. I'll give you an example right now. Something I'm working on is on the motocross track. I'm getting a little bit more advanced with some of the jumps and things that I'm doing in transitions, but I'm not going to go just hit the biggest jump on the track just to say I did. And hey, I know that's going to be a scary moment at some point, but if I can't corner leading up to that jump, I have no business jumping that jump. So it's no different than if somebody can't keep their feet up balanced and have confidence at slow speed, maybe they should rethink going on the highway on a long ride with 400 people at a charity event. Maybe they should practice slow speed skills and kind of earn their way up. And that's the principles behind what we do. Our instructors, a couple unique things about that process and what they teach. Each individual brings a unique set of circumstances to our class. So that's why I can't tell you that one's any more important than the other, because something that you're struggling with, Q might not be struggling with, or another rider might not be struggling with. So what's important to you is what's important to you. So that is the most important skill set when you come to our class. And that's what I think is really super cool about our class. We individualize it to the people that show up. Yeah, we have a process, we have a curriculum map that you follow, but instructors can deviate and put more emphasis on things that the student is struggling with. So the bottom line is, if you get in a situation where you feel like, hey, I'm struggling with this one thing and everybody else I know isn't, it doesn't mean it's wrong. If it's important to you, to us, it's the most important thing that we got to deal with. So it could be, slow speed control, and slow speed control. I mean, it's a huge topic, right? It's not just going slow. It's managing clutch control. It's managing throttle control. It's managing not only how to turn the handlebars and get the motorcycle to lean, but the timing that you use in order to do that in the moment that's presented in front of you. It's not just going fast and hitting the brakes, but it's going fast and applying the brakes properly and making sure that you understand how the weight transfers differently as you get beyond parking lot speeds. You're no longer pivoting the handlebars. When you're going at legitimate road speeds, you start to get in that gyroscopic effect where the front and rear tire just want to stay locked in. How many people have actually trained in that gyroscope to know that not only are there gyroscopes externally with the tires, but there's gyroscopes internally that are turning with the flywheel and gears and everything else. And it's important that you do understand that and then know how to apply it. But what is most important? If the person can't safely get to that speed, if the person can't turn onto the roadway or, into the highway safely, to me, yeah, braking's great, but I don't think it's necessary for that person. But again, I'm not the keeper of that person. So if they decide to take that risk, again, it's each individual person, addressing what's most important to them.
Yeah, I mean those are all great points, and that question is definitely a little tough to answer in that way, trying to single out one. But I 100% agree with you. All those things combined is the most important, and that brings up a thought for me. Do you think they need to rethink the basic rider course? Because me looking back when I went and took it, I think it needs a little bit of updating.
I do, and I think the problem is a lot of people, they don't know what they don't know, right? So they
Hmm.
show up, and in my experiences in the past, I've seen dealerships firsthand send people to the DMV to take a class or to take the test, and they're taking it on a Honda Rebel or they're
Hmm.
taking it on a moped, but they're selling the person a Road Glide. They're selling the
Yep.
person a Honda Goldwing. And although the physics at the most basic level are the same, the way that those physics interact with the rider are completely different, with more horsepower, braking power, lean angle, geometry, all the different things that come together for those in particular machines in that moment. So a rider will go down, ride a Honda Rebel, get through the course through miniature cones, and now they get this license and they feel, I'm ready. Like I'm
Yeah.
ready to go, because my I would hope that my state and my local government would assign something to me, a training to me, to look out for my best interests. And I think we're falling a little bit short there. I think having somebody come and actually test on the motorcycle that they're going to register to ride on the road, that's a starting point. I've heard of graduated driver's license programs overseas where somebody rides a smaller motorcycle and gets comfortable training and working on that. So it's more of a progressive approach, kind of like what we do with our training. There's a lot of different avenues we can go, and I've approached it. I'm not giving up on it, but these riders at the basic level, they really only get up to parking lot speeds and a little bit beyond. I mean, to a point where you could drag your feet almost and stop the motorcycle. I don't know how that's adequate enough to now let somebody take, let's just say, a ultra classic or a Goldwing out, and then is there any rule that says they can't put a passenger on the back? So now they don't have that training experience. They have kind of a false sense of security. They head out on the road, and next thing you know, a deer runs out in front of them. They've only experienced training and doing threshold, if you will, braking
Hmm.
at 10, 15 miles an hour on a bicycle with an engine. And I think it really limits their potential to safely negotiate past that threat. So yeah, I do think there needs to be some reform in that. I'm not saying at the basic level it's not a bad idea to get people through a program like that where they're just getting familiar with the motorcycle. I think it
Hmm.
has its place, but do I think it should license people to go down the road at 70 miles an hour? I
Nope.
personally do not. So
Nope.
it's something that I hope in time we can change. That maybe they would help subsidize people to come take a more advanced training similar to ours or others that are out there.
Yeah. And then Robert Simmons, Be the Boss of Your Motorcycle, says, unfortunately, if they change the standard of the basic rider course, it would just lead to more riders riding dirty than they are now.
Yeah, I mean it could, but that kind of goes with everything, right? The standards. I don't disagree with that statement, but I'd be willing to take the risk of. I think most people make the right decision in life. Like for example, me being a career police officer, I don't look at the world as a negative. I look at it as a positive. Most of the
Hmm.
interactions I have with people are positive. And I know he's a career police officer too. So it's one of those things where we got to look at it and say the cup is more than half full here of people that I believe would say, you know what, I'm not going to skip the licensing if the state's going to offer me a way to keep myself safe, to keep my family members safe, to keep me in a position where I can actually see my retirement and enjoy the fruits of my labor. I don't know that many people would just, sidestep the law. You're going to have a few, and that's just what's going to
Right.
happen. But I don't think that's going to be the majority.
Yeah. And one big thing I think, so like I started riding about 10 years ago. None of this motorcycle stuff was really, I don't even want to say like big, but or it wasn't really popular. And then you started seeing a shift where people on YouTube, like there's a bigger shift of people like stressing that you need to learn this stuff, which is
Sure.
a huge help.
Yeah, it is. I mean, obviously, social media has been great and also bad in different ways. But
Hmm.
for the most part, as far as getting the message out that, hey, these opportunities are out there all over the place, I think it's great. It's like going back to our class when we talk about differences. A lot of people just assume that maybe it's just another run of the mill police class, or maybe it's similar to an MSF class. They just assume training's training. Uh, but no, I mean, the standards that they were able to learn from our instructors. For example, like, lock and lean instructors, we have a very, very strict standard, and each instructor has to go through training with me. They have to be graduates of the program. So every instructor that you're learning from, it's consistent. The message, the training, the curriculum, no matter where you go in the country to take a lock and lean course. And then when I was taken, back by some other students that have taken a state standard course, they're going to a course where one instructor says one thing, one instructor says another. There's mixed messages, even though there's cards to read from. And I guess we have a little bit more discretion. We have an outline to follow. We have a common goal, but how we get there, the instructors learn different processes of consistency. So it goes back to standards, right? And what are we using for a measurement of that standard? And that's something that, my opinion is, I think it should be a stricter standard than what it is, just for the safety and enjoyment factor of people that are out there riding. Another thing with us, like, we don't franchise either. So when you take a course in Florida, it's not a franchise of lock and lean. It is a direct representation of
Hmm.
me, because I'm overseeing what, Master Guns Grant is doing down there, and he's giving me feedback throughout the class and sending me videos of students and different ailments they're having that he's working through. I would just like to see more consistency throughout the country on whatever that standard is. Whatever is decided on, it'd be nice to get a consortium of people together and say, what is our end goal? We want people to handle the motorcycle at slow speed. Okay, what size motorcycle and how tight is that standard? And then
Hmm.
we want people to be able to stop that motorcycle in a certain distance. And what is that distance and what is that speed, where we feel that they'll have the best chance of survival and have the most fun on a motorcycle. And yeah, so will it change? I don't know. I'm going to give it hell, and we'll see what
Yeah.
happens.
No, that is one good thing about your course is it's in multiple locations, but it's ultimately conducted by you. And I've taken Pro Rider, which no knock to Pro Rider. It was a great course. My buddy Mike Weisenbach did his, but you go to one Pro Rider, it could be completely different to another Pro Rider course because it's franchised out and they pretty much have free reign to do what they want to do to an
Sure.
extent. So let's move on to question number 7. Now this one you can only pick one. I'm not letting you do a whole smorgasbord this time. What-
Says who?
Hey, it's my show over here, okay? Don't boss me around.
All right.
I'm kidding. What, what do you think the most important upgrade is on a motorcycle that pertains to slow speed maneuvers?
So I wouldn't just put it all into one category of slow speed
Hmm.
maneuver. Can't get that out of me, because I don't believe in that. If your motorcycle should be set up in a way where you can handle it at slow speeds, and then you can leave from slow speed in that parking lot and go right on the highway and be safe and have control of that motorcycle. So to summarize it in one block, the best I can, my friend,
Okay.
is the controls, the actual capsule that's around the rider. So when we talk about one thing, I'm going to put it in one package: handlebars, seat height, and controls at the most basic level. So I get students that come to classes, and sometimes you'll be able to see a video or two of me out there riding different motorcycles that students bring to class. And I see people with handlebars that are, up here, or I see people that have drag bars that are super low. They got their seat really low and their legs are in the wrong spot, or you get a tall guy that just got an ultra classic and now he's, basically sitting on the frame and his handlebars are hitting his knees. In our classes, when you take the 101, whatever you bring, we try to make adjustments to the best of our ability. So when I talk about being able to manage your motorcycle at slow speed, you should be able to manipulate the handlebars and controls as an extension of you. No different than you flexing your fingers, closing your hand. That's how the motorcycle should turn for you. That's how that motorcycle should accelerate for you. That's how your back should feel. Your body shouldn't feel tense. Your arms shouldn't feel extended way out to the point where they max out and you can't safely make a turn. Your foot shouldn't be cramped to a point at an angle that, as you're applying it at slow speed or during the braking process, you start to cramp up. You shouldn't be getting arm pump. Okay, so if you got your handlebars set with your hand grips and your levers in a way that creates a T-Rex effect, you're starting to get, fatigue, and it's going to put more strain and stress on you in the process. So, the seat height, that's a huge one too. If you look at how a standard police motorcycle comes from the factory, the seat is taller. The handlebars are not your traditional beach bars or buckhorns. They're a nice heritage softail style bar that's nice and level, keeps the shoulders, the arms level. If you look at the way that the officer is positioned forward and the floorboards are set, everything is there for a platform to use the motorcycle as a tool for a long shift or a long detail. I think that a lot of motorcycle manufacturers are missing the boat with how much skills training is out there for people to jump on. You'd think they'd catch on thinking, wow, look at how these people are riding. Look at how those people are riding. Look at what that person can do on this motorcycle when it's set up properly. But again, if we're being realist too, they're also looking at it saying these are accessories that they can buy after the fact. Police officers need it for the job now. So a lot of times we'll get people saying, how do you set up your motorcycle? What's your main focus? My main focus is the rider platform, taller seat, and if you have a, like say, a road glide and it doesn't come with a police seat, I know that people have put police seats on them, but you can also have somebody add cushioning to the seat. There's lots of custom seat companies out there that will gladly, add some padding in to get you over the center of gravity. There's companies out there that make different types of handlebars, adjustable ones, some where you can actually, go in the dealership and test out to see what puts the reduced amount of strain on your shoulders, on your elbows, on your head. As far as brakes, I know that there's extended brake pedal companies out there, Soft Brake, Kiriakin, and other aftermarket ones where you can lower the brake pedal just enough to where your foot is actually a little bit more relaxed out there. Those are basic things that if we're talking about to have control over a motorcycle, what my focus is, it's those things. And then obviously it gets more advanced as you get more advanced. If we're looking on bolt-on parts, people always go for high horsepower. It's kind of the cool thing to do. I remember when I was first getting into Harleys myself, there was like 100 horsepower club and all these crazy things and upgrades. And that's cool. If people can handle it and, that's what they want to ride with, that's fine. No problem with it. Just as long as you have the skills to keep that motorcycle within the lanes. But suspension's a really good one. There's a lot of aftermarket suspension companies too that make a really nice ride, especially if you have a passenger. It's good to have something beefier back there so you're not bottoming out, especially if you ride in warmer climates where you start to get boil over, you start to get that fluid heating up, and then you start to lose that support from the fluid. There's Legends, Olin's, there's a bunch of different brands out there that if they're set at the proper height, by a mechanic, they can do you really good. So I guess I lost because I was just going to I mean, honestly, in our class, like people bring every kind of motorcycle imaginable, and we just walk through. And some of them say, "Look, this is as good as it gets," or "This is the style I want," and that's okay. We will do the best that we can with the motorcycle that we have and the limitations that it presents. But we will also show you the benefits of having a motorcycle that's fitted to you properly. And one more thing to add to that, it drives me nuts when people go to dealerships, and this is how they size them up for a motorcycle. How are you going to finance this today?
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
no, 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 no. How about let them sit on different motorcycles? How about ask them the type of riding they're going to do? Maybe talk about experience a little bit. Those are the types of questions I would really like to see. But I understand it's business; they're trying to make a sale, and they got to live with that. But I really wish, again, they could solve a lot of problems and increase the amount of joy people have on motorcycles if right from the get-go they set them up on a platform they felt confident in.
Yeah, yeah, I couldn't agree more. A couple of the upgrades that I recently just did was the police seat, and let me tell you, that is total game changer. I'm
Mhm.
spending all this money on these other aftermarket seats, and you can get a used police seat for 350, $400, like
Sure.
I did, and that's got to be the most comfortable seat I've ever sat on. Not to mention, it pushes you forward a little more,
Yep.
and it just makes it so much easier to handle the bike. And
Well, one more thing I want to throw at you too,
mm,
and so Corky over here said I can see the comments that I lost, and he's one of my students as well. Yeah, I did. But there's one important thing too with the internal components, the basic wear and tear parts like a clutch. I
mm,
got a call from Q not that long ago asking about clutches, and he's like, "What do you use?" I use stock clutches. My favorite clutch of Harley Davidson is a clutch that's on eBay that somebody put 30,000 miles on. And then they're like, hey, I upgraded. I'm like, cool. Let me buy this already broken in and let me put it into the motorcycle. As far as oil is concerned, we use very basic oil. We tend to use, Rotella T4, which is a diesel engine oil in our primaries.
Mm.
It's a little bit thicker. It's basic. You can find it at Walmart. So when people are, considering all these different upgrades and performance upgrades, I mean, sometimes simple is better. I can tell you that with a stock clutch and with running Rotella for me, it's lasted 2 years in a training environment because my instructor motorcycle I also use in class if I need to for rentals. And so students that are unfamiliar with slow ride and police style riding and proper riding really put a lot of wear and tear on those clutches. And legit, I've gotten a couple years use out of just using real basic, back to basic approach on mechanics. And so just something else to consider. A lot of
Yeah.
people that I've had as students jump to like a Screaming Eagle clutch or something that's more grip and rip, and they really struggle or they burn those clutches out because they're designed for go.
Yeah, that's one thing that Wade mentioned in the class that I was in. I asked him like what kind of clutch you guys use because I thought it was something special, and he said the best clutch you can put in there is the stock clutch.
Yep.
And I said because I put a Barnett one in my Street Glide and absolutely hated it, and then I I I unfortunately put a Screaming Eagle one in, but that was the closest thing I could find to stock. But it night and day difference, so
Yeah.
much better.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, between that, the seat, the soft brake, and the soft brake levers, complete game changers.
Absolutely. The ergonomics of the motorcycle are most important before any horsepower or any, performance upgrades.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. All right, so now let's move into question number 8. We got what's your favorite part of being a motorcycle instructor?
For me, it's the aha moment.
Hmm.
It's it's when a student comes in and you can tell that they're very passionate about motorcycling, but they've got some fear and some reservation and they don't really know where to go. They've tried a lot of different avenues and they just get to a point where they're banging their head on a wall and maybe have had some close calls. And then as we start working through our process, and sometimes we have to take a step back to go forward, which I really enjoy with our program. We've got multiple tiers in like our 101 class. So let's just say we have a class of 6, for an example, and 3 are they're getting it, it's clicking, they're feeling good, let's move on. They continue through the process. Well, we still keep those other students that aren't clicking at the same pace, but we might have to introduce them to something and then take them a step back to say, okay, you saw what was required to get to this step. Let's go back now to something that you were struggling with. And now that you've seen this, does this make more sense? And they go, oh, yeah. So they go in there and then you see them make the turn. And usually on the range, I mean, I've got videos I got to dig up of the instructors, but you'd think somebody won the Super Bowl or the Stanley Cup when it finally clicks. And I know in Tennessee, Jeff Beck, our motor officer extraordinaire instructor from Wisconsin, the passion that pours out of him is just undeniable. It's a beautiful thing. And there's a student that came in that had these goals and he wanted to graduate, but he had some stubborn bad habits. And after the class was technically over, I see them still working together out there. And then as we're just starting to pack up, I just hear the wahoo, and I look over and here's this guy. It clicked, and he's going left and right in 18s, and he's like, "Why didn't you just tell me that?" It's like we all laugh about it because it is a process and it takes practice and it takes dedication. But yeah, it's exciting to watch the success of the students. When I was younger and doing competitions and really getting my feet wet and becoming an instructor, I had a lot of joy, going out there and kind of showcasing what I can do. And now it's more so the reward of seeing what someone else can do, with the right tools and confidence. And we encourage people when they come to class. I mean, bring whatever motorcycle you want. Sometimes it's just a matter of seeing a professionally trained person get on that motorcycle and either do good, or maybe we find limitations that we weren't even aware of, and then we work together to figure out how we can make this platform work, or change the platform, or just deal with whatever those limitations are. So the individual successes, as we progress. The other nice thing I like is I get a lot of emails and phone calls from former students, and they say, I could hear you. I could hear you say, get on those brakes, keep your head up, keep your head up, keep your head up. I could hear you guys say, lean forward, because you said it so many times that it became ingrained into my head. So when that situation presented itself on the roadway, I just instinctively went back to what was echoing in my ear, out of passion, right? Not spite, not
Hmm.
anger, to make them survive that situation, to help them survive and make the decision that worked that day. Will it always work? Of course not, right? Every situation is unique, and we can only cover so many things in a class, but those are the rewarding moments that, I reflect back and look and say, it was worth it. It was worth the time. It was worth the blood, sweat, and tears, the travel, the investment, the hours and hours in the rain, in the cold, training, studying, researching, writing down, doing it again. And yeah, I think that pretty much summarizes it.
Yeah, that's got to be an awesome feeling to see somebody finally get something that they weren't getting, and it's like Christmas, seeing them actually get it, and it's got to be great. And two things that stuck for me from the class is attacking the dead zone, and they said that a lot: attack the dead zone and practice with a purpose. And that gives me a whole new meaning when I go out to the parking lot and set up cones. I mean, I'm doing it for a reason, not just to do it now.
Yeah, and just to expand on that just a little bit, when you talk about dead zones, most people, unless they've taken our class, they have no idea what you're talking about, and that's
Hmm.
okay. Hopefully, they come and they learn what that is. But when people practice with a purpose, the whole idea is you show up to a lot, and what is your goal? Repetition is great. There's no doubt about it, but it has to be proper repetition. Because I've heard people say practice as much as you can, but if you're not practicing properly, you're developing long term bad habits. And so it's one of those things where having a formal training environment, at least a couple times in your life on the motorcycle, is a good thing, because you have another set of eyes that's seeing something that maybe you think you're doing right from this video you watched, or you think you're doing right because you think you've emulated what you saw or heard. But in reality, you're off this much, and all it would have taken was somebody, even an untrained eye for that matter, to either capture it on video for you, or come over there and say, hey, look, you missed this turn by 3 feet. Like, you didn't use 3 feet of space that was available to you. But in your perspective, maybe you're riding a road glide or a gold wing, and you didn't see that you missed that space. It's important that when you set up practice sessions, that purpose is, what are the limitations? Have barriers and boundaries that legitimately will tell you that, hey, I hit a cone. Hey, I tipped over a tennis ball. If people just go out and practice in empty parking lots, that's great. But if they're just practicing turning and they think that they're doing an 18-foot turn, but they've never measured the parking spaces, and in all reality, those parking spaces are 10 feet. So now they're doing 20-foot turns, and then they don't realize that they're within those painted lines. They're outside of them because they can't see when they're on top of the motorcycle. Now they're turning in 22 feet. And then they get to a roadway that looks about 18 feet, and they have a false sense of security from practicing something that wasn't, I guess, standardized or regulated. And they had no idea that they were outside of that until it's too late. And they start making that U turn. And next thing you know, that front tire ends up on a gravel shoulder and pushes them down into a ditch. And they're like, well, I did everything I could. And it's like, no, you missed that purpose part. Same with learning patterns. Learning patterns is great and it's a fun challenge, but working on technical drills is better than learning a pattern, because a
Hmm.
technical drill will get you through any pattern. So,
Right.
when you know that you feel comfortable in your platform, you can set up any pattern or show up to a rodeo and get yourself through a pattern. May not be the fastest, but our goal and focus here is the cleanest.
Yep.
Because if you're not clean, and the standards in our class, you have to pass it clean at all levels. Because the bottom line is, if you're touching a cone, you've just hit the corner of a car, right? So that's why it's super important when people practice repetition that they have boundaries, they have barriers set, and they know that they've made that mistake versus a false sense of security that can set them up for failure.
Yeah, I encourage everybody, go get you a cheap little tripod. You don't have to post it on YouTube or anything or become a YouTuber. just just record yourself doing this stuff, and as you said, Ben, like it'll actually show you if what you're doing wrong, so you can go back and look at it. I couldn't tell you how many times that's helped me so much, because typically when we're out practicing, it's by ourselves, at least me. So I don't know, I can't see what's going on. All
Sure.
I know is I can tell if I hit a cone, but I might not be able to know why I hit that cone until I see it on the video. So I
Well, and
encourage everybody.
one thing to add to what you said, you practice alone and that's okay. But I always tell my students, my instructors, team members, if you go to practice, you should have somebody with you, because if that motorcycle were to tip over on top of you and catch your foot, bad things can happen and have happened. And at a minimum, make sure people know where you're going, have a start and end time. I mean, it's all part of that practice with purpose, right? I know people are like,
Mm,
oh, it's too regimented and we're not having fun and we're not living free. No, you're just using common sense. If you
yeah,
don't come home by 8 o'clock, your wife should, if she likes you, she's going to go over there and she's going to check, or a
yeah.
friend or whoever. So it's just one of those things where just use some common sense with your practicing. And videos are great. They're a great tool to find different angles. Don't always set it up at the same angle. Change angles up.
Mhm.
And then you can experiment with different techniques.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, so let's move into question 9, and then I'll have a bonus question. Hopefully, Q sticks around because he's going to enjoy this one.
Oh boy.
And then we'll do a quick giveaway. But for question number 9, what's the worst experience you've ever had on a motorcycle? Could be any time.
So I have a few. So I'll start with on dirt. On
Okay.
dirt, I destroyed my leg in a racing environment, practicing before a race, and was out there with a whole bunch of other riders that all had a different mindset. Remember the whole practice with purpose thing we talked about? Well, I should have probably hung back in the group and let everybody go off and do their thing in the chaos, especially at the amateur level, right? And so I ended up in the middle of the pack and went over a jump. I was just rolling my line. It was just warm ups. And next thing you know, I had a motorcycle over top of my head and had to make a maneuver to not have my neck get crushed by a dirt bike. And my foot got stuck in the side of a jump, and I had a YZ450 that went off the jump, and my leg stayed with the jump. So that was a pretty awful experience. And then obviously pushing myself now that I'm back, doing some motocross racing or really getting into it. Honestly, I've knocked myself out and injured myself just from pushing the limits. And I've learned a lot, from those riders too that have actually helped me on the street side of things. Go slow to go fast. I can't say it enough. A lot of times when riders say, I got to go, I got to catch up with this guy, I got to ride this pattern faster, I got to get onto the ramp, no, slow down. Soak everything in for a second before you make a decision that could end up getting yourself hurt. Um, on the street, two that I can think of that I was off duty that I will never forget was I was coming back from a training event in Illinois, and a lady lost control of her car and missed one of our officers by 3 feet. I heard the screeching tire and made a escape maneuver down the shoulder of a highway. Three other officers, again, were off duty coming from a training event, followed me, and the state trooper that was in the back just had nowhere to go, and the car went right by him, 3 feet away, 45 miles an hour into the ditch.
Wow.
So that was a pretty memorable experience. In Michigan, one night I was riding between families' homes, and they had cut out a section of roadway that was about 10 feet long and the entire width of the roadway. And the company did not fill in the dip. It was a
Oh
privately
no.
contracted company. So the concrete had dropped close to 1.5 feet, and they did not taper it whatsoever. It was just dropped. there were cars in front of me, and it was way too late for me to recognize because they had no signage up either. So now this company just left that the state hired, and I watched a car go down into it. It was a Cadillac, as a matter of fact, and it ripped the entire front end of the car off coming at me, and it goes shooting. I'm bracing for impact, and this is where, when we talk about suspension, um, with one of the suspension companies, Olin's, I actually helped them with the prototype for the modern Harley suspension that they use. And I had
Mhm.
that prototype on the back of my Road King. When I hit that divot and went down, the suspension had loaded, preloaded down, and then popped the front end up. So the rear end actually picked up my stock front suspension, and it gave me just enough angle to hit that other side. And I was doing 50 miles an hour. I
Holy
hit the other
smokes.
side of that pavement. My saddlebags blew open. All my stuff blew out of the saddlebags. I went airborne, landed. None of the tires popped. The rim didn't bend, or didn't bend, and I pulled off to the shoulder. And I just thought to myself, man, I mean, everything worked out for me. I didn't panic. The other thing I did, obviously, was when I saw that barrier, is I accelerated and got my weight back so I can get the front end light to get up over it. And then the final step is, being a motorcycle officer at my department. I'm on patrol, and I've responded to calls with armed subjects. I've been to burglaries in progress, car crashes, a variety of things that have been less than comfortable from a motorcycle, but the element of surprise has been great. Been in pursuit of somebody that fled, that was wanted, and helped apprehend him with the motorcycle. Actually, I went through 9 backyards, a vegetable garden, and we got him in a fenced in area. But, those are less than favorable conditions. But, if I wasn't on the motorcycle in those scenarios with those armed subjects and other scenarios, I wouldn't have been able to get back as efficiently as I did. And I'm still here to talk about it. So, as far as a tool for the job, it's not just for traffic. It's worked out really, really well. I literally have a separate book I could write on,
Oh,
tales of patrol. But that's an example of some of the more serious things that I've faced. I mean, I've had plenty of people that have crossed the center line distracted, especially in today's day and age, with everybody on a cell phone and everybody having to update their social media status during rush hour traffic.
yeah.
And then next thing you know, you see the headlights of a car in your lane and you're swerving into oncoming because I've trained that way. It's the only available option that I have. And that definitely, was a close call, a pucker factor, if you will, to have to go and do that and then come back. It's one thing to train for it in the cones, but then when the moment presents itself, I was very
Mhm.
fortunate that my body, my mind, and my training connected. Because do we really know how we're going to react under a situation or in a situation until we're in that situation? We can all talk about it, but until
Yep.
you're actually there and you experience it real time, that's when you're going to know if your training's worked for you. It might help you control it. And we talk about experience versus skilled riding. Remember, experience is comfort. Experience is me riding for a set amount of time and saying, I'm comfortable on a motorcycle. But it doesn't necessarily mean I have skill to get myself out of situations. Skilled riding and proper training and any type of formalized training to help you connect to your motorcycle is actually building confidence in the rider. So if you can combine experience with confidence, you really have the ideal situation. And that's what we're trying to build with what we have. And so far for my career, God willing and knocking on some wood, I can see it to the end of my career.
Yeah, man. It seems like you've definitely had some experiences, no doubt. And I think writing that book would be a good retirement project
I think it
if you
would
have
too.
time.
There's some funny stories in there too.
Yeah, I'd
I'd say
I'd
I'd
be
say
interested
more,
in that.
more funny than harrowing. So
Yeah. You'd also have to release that on audiobook because I don't think Q can read. So speaking of Q, let's move on into the bonus question. But I have a quick clip to preface this question. So let's go ahead and roll that real quick.
Don't anticipate the whistle. On your mark. Get set. Stop. You picked up. Yeah, you're good. You're good. You're good. That's it. It's over.
What you just saw was the final race of the slow speed championship. Q has all these excuses and asterisks and everything, but the bonus question is, why do you think Q lost that slow speed championship?
I think that you had more drag with the hat on versus the helmet. He was more streamlined, so you weren't wearing proper gear, and the hat was catching the wind, which was helping you hold the motorcycle in place. It couldn't have anything to do with Q not looking where he needs to be, or popping the clutch, or maybe having erratic throttle and his knees were dancing a little bit and bouncing the rear brake and not leaning forward. But other than that, um, I will say this: Q did uh, come to our event last year, or I should say this year, for his first event. Did wonderful. We did some work on the slow ride, so I actually think we need to do a rematch in March at our event, just for you guys. We need to
Okay.
set up the same exact slow ride to spec, and as long as you guys can give me that, it doesn't seem too hard. It just seems like 2 lanes, but we
Yep.
need to set it up, and I think Q needs a rematch. What do you think? Are you down?
Oh yeah, I'm definitely down for a rematch.
All
So
right.
the dimensions are simple. It was two parking spots, which was 9 feet wide, and then I believe it was 40 feet long.
Well, you know what else I'm going to do? I think I'm going to make a special lock and lean trophy because both of you are lock and lean students.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm going to make a legit slow ride trophy just for the battle between you two guys, you two
Okay.
influencers and cool dudes. And besides having the belt, let's get an angry cone in there.
All right. All right. Yeah, let's do it. Let's see if Q has responded yet. We are on a little bit of a delay. Uh Q said it's over. You heard it. Yeah, yeah, but it's okay. But I'm definitely down for that. I will make another video of that as well because that'd be great. So maybe not the belt. Maybe we'll keep that at Robert Simmons' anniversary, but
Beautiful.
we'll do it for the trophy. So maybe he can win a trophy.
Beautiful.
All right, guys. So we're gonna open this up for Q&A. Lee Sturgis says, Mr. Wolf, in your opinion, I'm guessing, what is the advantage of looking down versus looking at the horizon during a turn?
All right, so we don't advocate looking down into a turn, at least a rolling turn. When I teach my slow ride skills, we have you look down because that's where you want to go. When I say slow ride, I'm talking extreme slow ride, not riding slow. So if you're riding slow, we don't look at the horizon. We don't look down. We look at the space that we want to attack. And then our head turns once we get into that space that we know we have enough to work with in order to execute the proper maneuver, then the head turns around. If he's talking specifically for like slow ride, like competition slow ride, the reason I don't like using the horizon is things in the horizon can move. And if you're in a controlled course, like a competition course, it's a closed off course. So you know what the path of travel is. So it goes back to the old adage, look where you want to go. If you only want to go a couple inches at a time, you can pick a spot down and you can work your way towards that. Now, if the motorcycle decides it wants to go left or right, then you want to pick your eyes up to the horizon to find your balance point again. And then you readjust and then you look where you want to go.
Melissa McDonald says, what's the one exercise that gets new students every time?
The one new exercise that gets students every time. It's crazy. It's really got to be the figure eight. I would say that and the 90-degree pullouts. And it cracks me up because we do 90-degree pullouts, and you did them in the four corner drill.
Hmm.
But they got to do them left and right. And in our curriculum, you have to be able to perform all these maneuvers both left and right. There's no attempt this way, go that way that you like. No, we got to make sure we can go right into the place we're eating and we can go left into the place we're eating, because it doesn't make sense to do a 360 in the road and come back. So we incorporate the drills to mimic the technique. And I think with the pullouts, people aren't used to having their handlebars turned in a narrow area. They're used to
Hmm.
pulling in places and just kind of pulling out straight, maybe dragging their feet. So when we put students into a confined area and we explain to them that what we're recreating is motorcycles parked next to you. We're recreating a car that pulled in while you were at lunch and maybe pulled in a spot that isn't advantageous for you to get out, and you can't wait all day for them to come out. Off we go. So it's tough for them to find and generate the speed, the torque, and the maneuverability from zero. So I would say, as far as what people fail the most in our class, as far as not being able to hit the standard, it would be the pullouts, which you'd think 18-foot turns would be it, but it's not the case.
Right.
And it's also the figure eight. The figure eight for us is 20 feet in their 101. Our U turns is 18. And
Mm.
our figure eight, the way it's set up, you have kind of a narrow entry, and then the figure eight's tied together, the two circles. Well, students struggle with the transitions between those two areas, and we really have to focus on them, being more than one dimensional in their riding. So many people just train to do a turn and come back, as opposed to completing the turn and then executing another maneuver as if it would be on the street. If you think about it, think of a car crash, and then I'll move on to the next question, I promise.
Okay.
If
Okay.
there's a car crash, what usually happens? There's parts.
In regards
There's
to,
lots of things
yeah.
happen.
Okay. Okay.
So you decided that you were going to make a U-turn or a circle turn or whatever it is to avoid it.
Okay.
Next thing you know, there's fluid that's dripping out that if you were to drive through, now you have to transition the other way, away from the antifreeze that's pouring out in front of you, away from the wheel that's broken and rolling your way. So it's
Hmm.
one of those things where students, they train so many times in just one dimension that they can't get that transition. And that also, if you think about it, the 90-degree pullout is a transition as well. So I think they neglect the pullout in our class when they're practicing, because they're like, it's just pulling out from a stop. And then they get to day 3 and they're like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So
Yep.
hopefully that helps.
Yep. And that pullout also helps with. I know you've probably seen it numerous times. We've all seen it. These people that turn out of a driveway and they cross over into the other lane. I mean,
Yes,
that's extremely dangerous.
it is.
But- Okay, so let's move on to the next question. Quick comment from Robert Simmons. Ben, I hope you know how much you're appreciated. Thumbs
Yeah,
up.
and I share the same. I share the same. I think it's awesome that he's traveling around and, having fun doing it and interacting with people and sharing some new skill sets. And I've heard a lot of compliments on just the amount of fun people have, out there training with him. And it's a beautiful thing. So keep doing
Oh
what you're
yeah.
doing.
Yep. All right, and then we had, so we'll combine this into two of them. We got, I forget, I don't know where the other one was, but the 201 schedule. Oh, there it is. Donald says 301 schedule.
Yeah,
He's asking.
here's the crazy thing. I'm glad they mentioned that. Lock and Lean in Illinois has moved to a new location. It's really, really, really cool for next year. So we have an attraction now. Instead of being at the baseball stadium, now we're at Historic Auto Attractions, which is a museum that's 87,000 square feet of American history. And they've
Oh,
got some of the coolest cars and Americana history that you could ever dream to see in your lifetime. And we're training at that facility. So when people come and train with me in Illinois, you get to see some of the coolest things in history you'd never be able to think in a lifetime that you'd be within inches of seeing. I mean, just picture being right there with Wyatt Earp's saddle, Annie Oakley, like the rifle that just all these things. The Secret Service car that was there, the fateful day
wow.
of JFK. You name it. There is just so much history there to absorb. So when it comes to 201, 301, the reason I've been delaying is because I've been trying to set up this really cool experience for people to come out, and then when they're done training, they can learn something about this great country.
That's cool. That's cool, man. Uh, that now 201 and 301, is that only in Illinois?
For now, yes. I mean, I'm the
Okay.
guy is going to teach that. I have another instructor that's certified to teach that. But yeah, mainly it happens in Illinois. Now we have talked about, if riders are interested, of me traveling to some of our remote locations, maybe
Hmm.
Pennsylvania or the competition that's happening in Florida in March. I was considering if people wanted me to come 3 days before the competition and do an advanced class, since you guys are all going down there anyway. I'd consider doing that.
Yeah. Okay. Very cool. All right. Terry says I don't think it's much of a question, but he said, I took a class from Doug Wolfe about 4 years ago. It was a very humbling experience. I plan on taking a class from Lock and Ling this spring.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, that's my father, Doug Wolfe, and yeah, he puts on a really good program. That was where I started. We're a little bit different in the way that we teach and the training curriculum itself, but yeah, an
Mm,
absolutely awesome place to learn. So we look forward to having you in spring.
very good. Richard Clark says, is there any provisions for people who want to travel to your school to do the course, meaning bike rentals? I'm from Canada.
Oh yeah, we love Canada. Uh, You know, uh, yeah, we have motorcycle rentals available. I have a limited fleet of just various year Road King police bikes, but we have riders from Canada, Spain, Brazil. They travel from all over the place. So if there was a class that you had in mind that you want to take, I would jump on the rental as soon as possible because those tend to fill up quick because people like to ride something that isn't theirs to scratch and bang
Right.
and wear out. But yeah, if you're coming from somewhere else that's a distance from one of our locations, we most certainly can provide you a motorcycle at least up in Illinois. I know there's some rental opportunities in Florida, and then if I travel to Tennessee or when I travel to Tennessee, I usually bring a rental fleet with me. It's just those things go really fast. So again, if
Yeah.
you're thinking about renting for those accommodations, absolutely. I mean, we've had students that came down to our competition last year from Canada, and I brought them a rental motorcycle to use. So yeah, we can
Awesome.
accommodate.
Yep. Awesome. Uh, Kevin B says, any particular bars recommendations for us short riders on a big bagger Roadmaster, trying different bars for best fitment?
I wish I had, the knowledge, the working knowledge of all the part numbers and availability out there. All I could tell you is this: try to get a handlebar, a universal bar that's more central to your body as opposed to up or down. You want to try to have your hands in a position where they can be relaxed, your arms are nice and even, and it minimizes the amount of effort you have to use to turn the handlebars. Most certainly, if they want to email me, I can reach out and do some follow up on my own for them and with them and see what we can come up with to get as close to that as possible. I'm absolutely willing to help with that. So it's lockandlean@gmail.com. Feel free to email me and I'll help you with that.
Perfect. Yeah, for me, I used to ride with 12s, and I'm like, this is too tall. So I went down to 10s, and a good company that I came across is Factory 47. They have a nice pullback to you, and they're not too not too tall, and
Sure.
they're spaced just perfect. At least for me. I mean, everybody's different. It's like wearing a different pair of shoes, you know.
Well, and I'd be careful too with bars in general. I had some bars that were adjustable at one point that I was trying out, and this company wanted me to demo them. And I'm not going to say the company. I didn't proceed with the bars because when I was using them at the adjustment points from the amount of torque and stress on the motorcycle doing motor training, I actually was able to break one of the sides loose.
Oh wow.
So for me personally, I like a fixed bar. Now I'm not
Mm,
saying that, technology hasn't changed. This was several years ago, but it's a lot harder to break a solid piece of metal than it is with all the extra moving parts.
yeah. No, it makes sense. Let's see. Jimmy the Bull, he says the pull out was my nemesis. You could take that one or two ways, but this is a family show, so
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Yeah, he was struggling with the 90-degree pullouts, and we talked about it in class. Just having an open mind and not neglecting that process. I mean, there's multiple drills that we do that they have to show proficiency in, as you know, in order to get that certificate. But that one was one where he was like, "Man, I wish I had a few more reps." And we worked on it. And by the time we were done, and we fixed a couple little things. Right? What's the most important thing to focus on? For him, it was getting that speed up, right? But not reckless speed. It was nice, smooth release of the clutch and throttle simultaneously. And that
mhm.
alone was enough for him to just dial it in. And then, yeah, he streamlined it right to the finish line, earned the certificate, did a wonderful job.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know he messaged me before he came to the course. He was really excited about it.
Yeah, he's a lot of fun. We're looking forward to
Yeah.
seeing him in 102.
Yeah. Riding and wrenching says the figure eight was wearing me out,
Yeah. Yeah.
especially the part
And
going
here's
to the
the
right.
Yeah, and here's the thing, like, riders sometimes can overdo their practice because what happens is they hit a wall of frustration and you want it so bad, right? He's a very passionate person about wanting to be good at what he does, and especially motorcycling.
Hmm.
So I had to basically tell Q, like, look, you got to get away from this, work on some other techniques that will build you back up to the confidence level of conquering that right turn. We know right turns is been his weakness. And I always say this to people: if you have a weak side, and I love it when people say, "Oh, there's no such thing as a weak side." Yeah, there is. Of course, there
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
Practice your weak side 5 times for every one strong side. I had to get my thumb in there. I'm still not used to this camera. 5 to 1 ratio. So if you struggle with right turns, it's not a bad idea to get one good turn left so you get your confidence level up, and then get those right turns going. If you start your right turn and you fail at it, get out of there, go back in, do a left turn, get your confidence up a couple times, find out what in your process is working for you going left, and then take a break, take a deep breath, and say, okay, I just did 3 left turns, and I realized that my throttle is at the same RPM as I turn. But when I turn right, I notice my throttle drops off. So therefore, my hand position, my body posture is not in the spot where it needs to be. So let's make this adjustment instead of just twisting the throttle higher. Let's make some other fine adjustments so now it feels like the good side, and build
Yeah.
off of that.
Lee Sturgis asks, "What's the best way to practice for slow race comps? Q might need this. LOL." Hey, I'm
Wow.
taking shots at Q.
Yeah, he's throwing it down. So for me, the slow ride's always been something I've really enjoyed over the years, and I like jumping on different motorcycles and slow riding too. It's always a fun challenge to me. So when students bring something to class, Goldwing, whatever, let's slow ride it. Um, for me, practicing the slow ride, there's multiple elements, but at the most basic level of discussion, learning your path of travel, whatever that is in front of you, and understanding and committing to that is part of it, because then you're committed to your process. If you're just slow riding to slow ride, you're just balancing. But if you have a set area that you're working with, like for example, if I was in, let's just say, a detail where I need to keep both feet up on my motorcycle on a parade route or on an escort, because I don't want to take that extra half second to put my foot down for what could happen or what could take place. I need to have my feet up. I need to be ready to go. I might use the lines on the road and work between those. I might use the crown of the road as my center point, and then the outer line. And I'm just going to work as many transitions as I can smoothly. Another good thing that's real easy to do is go into grass and go on gravel and practice your slow ride.
Oh,
Why?
wow.
Because it throws all kinds of surprises at you. Because what's under the grass? Who knows?
Right,
When you
right.
start slow riding on pavement, you can kind of see that there's a crack coming. You can kind of see that it's uneven. You can see this, that, the next thing. You go into the grass, all of a sudden there's a little hole, there's a rock, there's something living underneath there. And next thing you know, you're thinking you got a good hold going, and then life throws a little wrench at you. And now you have to make a fine adjustment to keep your feet up. And if you're on grass, the nice thing is if you tip over, it's a little bit softer than pavement. It can
Yeah.
still hurt if you get your leg caught, most definitely, but gravel's the same way. You practice on gravel, you hit a pebble, right? I mean, if anybody here has skateboarded or rollerbladed or roller skated in their life,
Yep. Yep.
picture like your body on this board, right? Cruising along, and a pebble this big takes you off. That's why I got out of all of those, because I'm
Hmm.
like, if I can get taken out by a pebble, but don't kid yourself. On a motorcycle, if you're going super slow and you're concentrating all of that energy into that ball, right? That torque
Hmm.
ball that's just holding in place, and you hit a rock, next thing you know, it rotates and it puts you on the ground. But if you can compensate for that quick change, now it's developing that muscle memory of, I know what inputs I need to do to not be out of control here. So those are just some of the slow ride elements that are at a real basic level, available for people to use. That's usually anywhere. You can go to a parking lot and find some grass. You can usually find some gravel in a parking lot that isn't dusted off, or a gravel road. You could do it in your driveway. When we get into the more technical side of slow ride, it really is a very technical process to be good at it. It's very exhausting. And
Hmm.
it can also be detrimental to all the operating systems on your motorcycle if you're just sitting there doing clutch, throttle, brake. I know cop tricks. That's not the answer. There is so
Yeah.
much more to it. The less brake you use during slow ride, and you don't crush the egg underneath your pedal, the better you are.
Q said, "All good, even though Joe whooped on me. I still learned a lot. Learn when you win, learn when you lose.
Absolutely.
100%.
Yep,
All
I'm gonna
fun and
say
games.
I've learned way more though in all of my failures. Um, it's one of those things in life where it's like again, each person is their own unique being and creation, and if they accept failure as a success, I mean, I remember a poster from No Fear in my garage. It was like, you must always push the limits
Mhm.
because if you never fail, you never succeed. And I had that as a kid on my wall. And when I go out on my dirt bike and fail, or I played ice hockey and still play ice hockey and still ride dirt bikes, and I learn more from the mistakes and then how to apply them. And the victories are nice, but they're short lived, right? You're only as good as your last
Yep.
win, your last moment, and then you got to get over it and move on.
Yep. Then Robert said, I would definitely recommend you traveling.
Absolutely. Yeah,
And
I'm down. I'm down to travel.
yeah, Karen asks, is that competition in Broward County in Florida?
I don't know where Pensacola is. If I don't know if Master Guns is on right now. Wherever Pensacola Harley Davidson is, I'm not familiar with the counties of Florida, but it's at Pensacola Harley Davidson, March 22nd through the 24th. Does that sound right?
It sounds about right. It's on my
Okay.
calendar.
But if you're a rider that just wanted to come and just check out the training seminars we're doing, we have a lot of onlookers that we involve with the seminar. So if you missed out on competing or you're not quite ready to compete, you don't want to subject yourself to that quite yet, come on over and learn something with us. I come to that event and our instructors all head down there and we put on different training seminars that we pull elements from our different classes and offer some insight real time with riding and not just discussion for the riders.
Corky says, turning right was my nemesis until 2 p.m. on day 3.
Yeah. So I will say we call it the Harley pill just because, we mainly ride Harleys, but it's the motorcycle awareness pill that clicks. And I tell people with our class, with the intensity, the standards that we set, yeah, they are high, but they're very possible for any rider. You got to be able to deal with, hey, these first couple exercises, like your video, these are easy. I should have picked a higher. Oh, no, no,
Yep.
no. I'm good. And then you'll be like, wow, now I get it. And then there's this wave. It looks like an EKG, and
Yeah.
it's just one of those things that I tell people to be patient with your process. You came into this with whatever life experiences and world experiences that you've encountered, and that's tough to change overnight. And maybe we don't want to change all of your experiences and training. Maybe we just need to add a couple of our skill sets to your existing skill sets, and let's rock and roll.
Donald Huckstep says, been doing any competition?
Not lately. The last competition I did was Badger Motor Officers, and that was in August. And the next one that I have planned, I don't know. I've been kind of toying with the idea of doing a couple this year. My kids are doing competition swimming and been super busy learning how to ride themselves, and they want to start racing. And so I don't know which competitions. I know I'll be at ours to help, facilitate the training side of it. I do plan on attending a couple, maybe 3 next year. We'll have to see, how the schedule lines up. I'm also taking on trying to do a state championship series for motocross. So we'll see how
Oh,
well my old body holds up to that challenge. It's something that as a kid I always wanted to do. So before I get much older, I think now is the time if I'm gonna,
yeah.
take my body and put it through there. But I most definitely plan on and hitting up a couple of them for sure, and we'll see how it goes. Maybe more.
Very good. Good luck on that motocross thing,
Thank you.
too.
Thank you.
Robert says, exercise number 4, highest failure rate, 90-degree pull out. The schmoops, which I'm guessing that's Dave because he's got it on the windshield of his bike. Ben is one of the best dads to his girls. They do a lot of family things. One thing my girl and I love beyond all is their singing. See if Ben will give you a song.
You know what?
He was trying to butter you up there.
Yeah, well, you see, he prefaced that with all the buttering, and now he's like, sing a song. Oh, I want to. I can't think of the song. Like the song finds me. So when we go to classes, right, all of a sudden somebody's struggling with something, and I'll look at them and I'll be like, we got to work on something. And if somebody isn't leaning, we turn lean on mean into lock and lean when you can't turn, and I'll be your instructor. I will yell at you. I mean, it's horrible, I know, but these are just examples. I mean, that was horrible singing because it was just, I don't even know why I did that in this moment, but he compelled me to do it. And I am kind of out of my singing tune. I'm just
It's
making cue,
okay.
but there's an example. We have a lot of fun, and usually we have themes for
Mhm.
riders and problems, and they can continue learning on that theme when they leave class in their car.
It's awesome. Q saying jerks. I don't know who he's saying that to. I know it's not us, but
Come on, Q.
Box Tank says I worked at UPS and was told years ago that 92% of intersection crashes occur within 3 seconds of the light change. Probably good for all riders to wait and take that second or third look.
Yeah,
100%.
absolutely. I know UPS and a lot of those companies. I've actually been involved with some cases. So an interesting thing that I also do is I'm part of a major crash team up here. So they call me out for major motorcycle crashes as an expert to go look at the results of the crash and say, hey, what happened here or what could have been avoided? It's an honor to be involved with something like that. Obviously, over 20 years of seeing crashes and different things on the range, from just a skid mark to somebody scraping a floorboard to whatever. I'm able to kind of have this library of memorization of a certain length or angle or look that a piece of metal from a motorcycle has on the pavement. So they call me out, and I went on a private case where there was a delivery truck involved, and I remember hearing from the company on how strict their regiment was on checking intersections, checking 3 times before they back, checking a camera, checking mirrors. I mean, it was quite impressive. But you can imagine too, at the end of a long day of a carrier moving packages around and everything else, just like a motor officer or even just an everyday person riding a motorcycle with fatigue, they're going to rely and resort back to their training, right? So it kind of comes full circle. Yeah, check twice, but train hard. And that way, if you do get in a moment where you're distracted, you do get in a moment of stress, you resort back to your training. So I don't have to come out and be an expert on what's left.
Lee
Oh,
Sturgis. Oh, go ahead.
no, go ahead. I was waiting for someone to say what's in my cup. And this is like from Top Gun. Not that I'm that cool, but it was just ice water.
it, Lee Sturgis asks, where can I find a qualification course for being a motor officer?
So we offer one. We usually offer one a year, maybe two. We're a very specialized course, a little bit different than what's offered through Harley Davidson. But Harley Davidson has a school through Teaks, I believe, that's kind of all over the country. There's other private motor officer schools. I think if you just were to search in the internet, you could find them. I know Midwest, my father's school in Michigan, he does motor officer training as well. He's got a phenomenal school. So I would say, do the search, find what works best for you. But instead of just signing up for a course, do a little research into what you think would be the best fit for you. Because if you are getting certified to become a motor officer, you want to make sure that that fit is good for what your department does with motorcycles. With me being in conservation, I use the motorcycle way more versatile than maybe just a traffic unit. And I'm not saying traffic units don't use it versatile. No, those guys risk their lives every day like the rest of us. But I ride trails. I ride in very unique circumstances. I ride at night. I do a lot of things that the traditional motor officer may not see in their career unless it's a unique circumstance. So if there's a department out there that's hosting a training or a school that's more up your alley, or if something like what we offer that's a little bit more encompassing of general patrol operations, just do the research. But they're out there.
Yeah, I think it was mainly trying to get at like taking a course that would I don't give them the credentials that a motor officer would have without necessarily being a motor officer.
That doesn't exist.
Okay.
So I'm just going to tell you, it's not a super sensitive topic, but it's a topic to have. A motor officer, the only people that can be motor officers are police officers first, motor
Mm.
officers second. It's a specialty division that's earned, right? And it's a privilege. and it's a public service tool and certification. So it's not something that we take lightly. No different than somebody that says, "Well, how could I become a SWAT officer?" Well, you can't
Right.
unless you're a police officer. It doesn't make sense. Now, could you be trained in the same way as a SWAT officer? Yes. But I bet you if you were to ask a SWAT operator what it means to go into a barricaded situation or have your life on the line, and then say, hey, if somebody took training like yours, can they wear that medallion? I think you guys all
Right.
know what that is. It's stolen valor. It's no different than somebody saying, hey, I played war games in paintball once, and I
Yeah.
decided to put the US Marine Corps emblem on my shirt. Like, no, you weren't there. You weren't qualified to do that. So, um, can you take classes that are 2 weeks in length and people offer motor officer type training or an experience where they might give you a certificate saying you completed an 80-hour course? I'm sure they're out there. We don't offer that.
I think that's what he was getting at. He basically wants to go through the course. He wouldn't be the type of guy to say, "Hey, I'm a motor officer now."
Sure. Yeah.
But
So yeah. And then as far as our classes are concerned, our 4 classes are our motor school. It's just done
mhm.
where it's broken down into reasonable sections for someone to attain. But yeah, I wanted to clarify that as far as that certification to actually be a motor, that's something that we hold really close to our heart
Yeah,
because the amount of sacrifice that goes beyond the motorcycle.
right. Lee Sturgis says, "I'm looking for the cone patterns for the course." So the follow up is question. He was looking for the patterns that they do.
Yeah, so each school is unique to itself, and as far as the patterns, we would never just release patterns to students that we haven't trained because the whole objective is our patterns are designed around our techniques.
Hmm.
So just riding a pattern, yeah, I'm sure that you'll get better if you ride it 1,000 times. You're bound to get it once, but we don't want to teach a shape. We want to teach you a technique, and that's something for our training. We choose to have you in person.
Russell McDonald says there is infantry and then everyone else. LMAO.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I'm sure I was waiting for some Marines to chime in and stuff, and other motors, but they understand what I mean by that rite of passage of being a police officer first, and then earning the right to have that specialty assignment.
No, it 100% makes sense, man. I get it. Uh, Jimmy the Bull asks how many grads in 301.
Okay, so that's a good question. So we had a standard in the past where I used to have a handicap, and we would set up, a slow ride, for example, and the goal was 3 minutes. But if the average of the group was a minute 30 in practice, we would say attain a minute 30 in your slow ride. Now, because we call it the elite class and it has a competition element, riders compete against me in class. So whatever my standard is, you have to beat. Thus far, no one has passed,
All right.
and that's
Challenge
under the new
accepted.
standard. So yeah, challenge accepted. I'm all for it, but we go in elements like so. During the class, I'm actually teaching you the techniques I use and then strategies that I use to get there. I'm human like anyone else. I've
Hmm.
lost more than I've won over my years, and it's one of those things where again, if you're coming to learn the highest level credential that we have as an elite level student, there's no better way than to try to take on the creator of the program and get as much out of it as possible. The last thing to add to that is competition, right? I talked about
Hmm.
competition and the importance of it. Every day you guys are on the road, you're in competition. There's somebody that needs to get somewhere faster than you, sooner than you. Your life really doesn't exist to them. So when we talk about training for competitions, how important is it to have that mindset of, hey, you know what, this could be that moment that this kid's running late to school and decides to pull out in front of me. I'm trying to get to work or my destination. Our paths collide. My training under duress and in this environment has now afforded me the opportunity to stay alive another day. So, competitions, if they're treated correctly, if they're treated with the integrity that motor officers intended and instructors intended when it was created, they serve a purpose, and that's what our 301 class is all about.
Richard Clark, I'm not 100% sure what this means. 101, 201, 301, and
I
401.
think he's looking to see like what the different levels are. So 101 is our entry level, our grassroots class. 102 is the next step up where we start introducing road speed and timed exercises. 201 is where we intensify those, add a precision element, tighten things up, add speeds that are a lot higher. 301 is where you're competing with and against me over 3 days. And then we're incorporating everything from 101 through 201 and 301. The 401 class is my 80-hour police class. So the only people that are allowed to take the 401 class are certified police officers that are using it to get certified for their police department to go on patrol. Now, people will ask, what's the difference? The difference is all the skills training is exactly the same. If you guys go through my 101 to 301, I'm giving you all the intensive training and then some, because you get a few extra days
Mhm.
than motor officers, but you're not getting the tactical side of it. That's not my business to teach the civilian population. I'm sure that I know some guys that, do some firearms training, and there's some really bad dudes out there that are really cool that I'm sure could offer a class like that.
Mhm.
That ain't me. I offer it specific for response for police officers.
Yeah. Yeah. There's got to be a fine line there.
Sure.
Can't give all the secrets away. Ben, I mean, we've been going for 2 hours and 14 minutes.
Wow.
One of the
I'm
long,
sorry.
long. No, it's fine, man. It's great conversation. As I told you before, I'm not going to stop the conversation if it's flowing good, and it was flowing, man. All right, one last question that just came in. Box Stang 40 says, for Ben, Joe, Riding and Wrenching, and Robert at Be the Boss, you're all doing great work bringing education to all levels of riders.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that. I guess that wasn't a question then, but
No, that
we
you know what,
appreciate
that was
that.
awesome because listen, we're all passionate about it. This has been my life's work since I've been a kid, and I'm going to continue doing it until the day I die. So I get those same vibes from you guys. I appreciate what you do, Joe. I appreciate what Q does. All the influencers, the instructors that are giving it, they're all out there trying to make people safer. It's a beautiful thing. I can't say it enough. That's my line today. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, I'm the lowest level of all these guys combined, but I'm only teaching the stuff that I am 100% proficient at. I'm not jumping my boundaries. That's why I'm trying to take all these courses, man, because you got to know what you're teaching. If you don't, then nobody's going to take you serious.
Well, not only know it, but you got to believe in it.
Yes, 100%. Yep. Before you go, Ben, I'll give you the floor to where people can find you, all your social media and whatnot.
Okay.
So where exactly can we find you?
The easiest way is to go to our website, which you have right there. That was perfect timing. You read my mind. So lockandlean.com. I'm doing some updates to it. I manage the website for the most part. So I'm not the most tech savvy dude. Hopefully I can improve that a little bit. Also, my email address is lockandlean@gmail.com. And then you guys can also at lockandlean.com find a phone number for me. You guys can do a direct message through lockandlean.com. You guys can go on Facebook under the Lock and Lean page and send me a direct message. Usually I see them. I got some help with other instructors that are seeing messages if I'm at work or whatever the case may be. But if people have questions and they want to talk to me directly, I mean, the phone call is a great way. Email, if I'm super busy, I can usually, even if things are chaotic, respond to an email in detail and kind of work things out if people are trying to figure out which class, where, or any questions on motorcycle setup or whatever they need.
Awesome, man. Well, I want to thank you again for coming on. Can't wait to meet you in Florida. I mean, we had a great conversation.
Thank
It's
you.
I can already tell it's going to be a great time. I've been talking with Ken quite a bit. We've been messaging back and forth.
Yeah, he's
And
a good man. Great instructor
yeah,
too.
I'm looking forward to meeting everybody that I've been shooting messages with back and forth. But
Well,
all
we
right,
might have a
Ben.
T-Rex
Uh,
too. We might have a
Oh
riding
yeah.
T-Rex. Like, what
Oh
competitions out there have a riding T-Rex?
oh yeah.
Even more
I've
intensive.
seen it. I've seen it on video, and
Yep.
that's impressive. You guys have a really
Yeah.
good T Rex
I
rider.
think the T-Rex is making another debut or return, I should say, to the competition circuit. And then the other cool thing is we have several of our former champions coming back to battle each other. So
Awesome.
it's like a reunion down there. So you're going to see some of the OGs from the first competitions from years and years ago out there riding, and I'm just really looking forward to it. A lot of fun we're going to have, a lot of learning we're going to do. Yeah, it's just going to be an absolute blast.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Ben, I will see you in March. And as I said, I'm looking forward to it, man.
Thank you. And I appreciate the opportunity, man. Keep doing what you're doing.
I appreciate it. All right, guys. That's going to wrap it up. A huge shout out to Ben. Awesome guest. Also want to shout out Break Free. Go and get you one. Use my promo code JOGO10 for $10 off. And if you guys are watching this on the replay, I'll put another playlist right here of all my past live streams. And as always, thank you for watching and tuning in. And until next time, this is Jogo with Jogo Motorcycle Adventures. And until next time, ride on.